checked in at the registration table. Remember to get your parking pass if you haven't gotten one, so that your car doesn't get towed. After today, you'll get an email with an evaluation form. Please fill out the email, and then you'll get a certificate saying that you were in attendance to turn in your LEAs. There's no CEU credits for this. Sorry. Lunch will be on your own from about 11:30 to 1. And help yourself to the snacks. Care to at any time. The bathrooms are to the left and around the corner. The girls' rooms are first, and the men's rooms have to keep on trucking around the corner. And finally, we want to extend a special thanks to Christy Walcott, the chair of the school psych department here at ECU, for getting the parking passes in this room for us and making it available and having such a wonderful day for us. And then this is Dr. Jim Denny, chair of school psychology at Appalachian State University. He's been the president of NAS and CSPA for 3 times. I don't know how he's done it since he's so young. Sent me a small bio over there. His research is into RTI and curriculum treatment integrity, school psychology, role and function, some research on specific disabilities, consultation, and trial feedback. So thank you very much for coming and driving that long trek down from the mountains.
You're
Appreciate it.
welcome. I want to thank Betty, thank Amanda, and I wonder if our NCSPA president has any words of wisdom this morning.
Oh, no.
She's our current president. Since I'm also the fall conference chair, I'll put in a plug. We have an awesome, conference plan. It's down your way, very, very close. So
Sunset Beach.
yeah, Sunset Beach. So we're all coming your way. And Sea Trail. So it's going to be fun. I've been working on a number of presentations, and we actually have a lot of submissions that have come in. And just, I think it was probably, my days get mixed up here, but I think it was probably somewhere around Wednesday where I actually put 2 submissions in on the PAI, the performance appraisal instrument that we're going to talk about, here, because by then we'll hopefully be, in the pilot stage, and we'll actually, be able to sort of roll this thing out. And Gene Williams, who is heading this whole process up, who's technically from McReal, who's been working with DPI, she's sort of the vendor, will be there with me and maybe, some other folks. So that, maybe as a way to start, those of you who are out there in the trenches working as practitioners, how are you evaluated now on what measure and who does it? Huh?
It's been a good while,
It's been a good while since you've been evaluated.
at least three or 4 years,
Okay.
on the old instrument.
On the old one?
This didn't really apply to us.
Some areas did.
You see, the old instrument, there still is an instrument out there.
Yeah.
We get evaluated every year, and it's called assessment, consultation, direct services, program development.
On the old version?
I don't know if it's the old, the new,
What's
it's the
the-
only one that we've had.
What's the first header on it, the first
I
thing?
don't even recall.
Because the old, still the current old DPI evaluation measure has assessment, White as the lead off sort of standard. So that's probably, I'm guessing, 16 to 18 years old. So it's been around a while, it's time for change. So this is kind of what we're gonna try to accomplish this morning. And, you know, we're a small group, so, you know, just to make this kind of interactive. So I want to sort of provide you with a chronologically here of the development of the standards, so you sort of know the timeline, you know, the development. And notice I'm talking about, you know, the standards, because the standards really are the deal. There's not going to be any surprises in any measure. The measure comes right out of the standard. So both of these instruments are invaluable. So this has been out a while. But I want to use the teaching standards and the teaching evaluation process as examples. And that's actually what we've done in our current work. So Gene Williams actually started us off the first meeting sort of looking at those teacher standards, which I had already seen because actually I've used those in class. But I hadn't really focused on the rules. Okay. So she was trying to show us kind of the flow, you know, of that. And that's how I want you to see it, because when we leave here this morning, without me telling you exactly what it's gonna look like, you're gonna picture it in your head. You're gonna know exactly what it's gonna look like, okay? You know, and I want to give you sort of a timeline that's coming from Gene Williams, not me. You know, on sort of the development and the rollout of this thing. So you're gonna see what our, you know, goal is here, and when this should happen, and it should be reality. When that happens, I'm gonna drink a whole bottle of champagne. Because I've been on a mission with this stuff since 2008. I'm ready to drink the champagne. And it's been a long haul. And obviously, I want lots of questions, concerns. This is gonna raise some concerns for a lot of people. This might, in fact, make some people retire. Okay? It did the same thing for teachers. So when the new teaching standards were rolled out, you know, and the evaluation process, many teachers left the profession, some voluntarily, some probably because they, you know, couldn't meet those standards. So, you know, there's gonna be some attrition rate, which is gonna be either voluntarily or maybe they just can't meet, you know, those new standards. Okay? The new standards, if you're a visionary person, that's what they are. You know, if you like a challenge, if you like to do more, than assessment, this is your dream tool. And that's what you see, you know, in the standards. And I would say one of the reasons why I push so hard for the standards and push so hard for the evaluation instrument is I think in my research that I've done over the years on school site role and function, and when we look at historically that literature, most of that literature consistently over decades, over, you know, 40-some years indicates that school psychologists, you know, would prefer to do more consultation and less assessment. And that's definitely what you're gonna see. In the standards, you don't see any standard that says school psychologist as assessors profession. It's non-existent. You know, it's sort of done, you know, by choice. You know, when we, you know, develop. The other thing that I like to talk about when I talk about, you know, both the standards as well as the evaluation instrument. You know, we had a whole fall conference on this last year, NCSPA, and our whole strategic plan last year was on school psych advocacy. We need to advocate for our positions. We need to advocate for our role and function in the school. You know, some data that we had, you know, presented to us from, you know, Legislative Public Policy Committee, and we lost something like, you know, 50 positions. 74 positions
this year.
in school psychology. So, not only are we in to try to retain positions, but we're also in to expand our own function. And it's pretty hard to advocate for yourself if you have a standard, you know, or a measure, but
74 positions from statewide, is that what we're talking about?
yeah, statewide.
We have
Okay.
74 less school psychologists in North Carolina this year than we did during the 2010-2011 school year.
Okay, is that because of the state isn't providing funding, or how does that work?
We don't know why. DPI sent a survey out to all of the LEAs. It went to the superintendents. It went to principals, executive directors, and it had
So this is
100.
based on feedback.
It had 100% response rate, and we found that there are 74 less positions this school
Gotcha.
year.
So it's not anything that it's what the districts are doing, it's what they're cutting their positions. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Most of that would be local decisions. I mean, bottom line is, it's coming out of that, you know, that budget.
Right.
So, but anyway, I think it's, my point is, not only do we have to advocate for building capacity in new positions, but we also have to advocate for maintaining positions. And I also think we have to advocate, you know, for practice. And I think if you're gonna advocate for practice, you have to have a tool that says, this is what a school psychologist does. And that old tool didn't get the job done. So what you see here, you know, are the teacher standards. Now, the reason I bring this up is when you see my sort of historical slide. One of the things that you'll see in there, excuse me, is that when we started this process in 2008, myself and then the state consultant, Jenny Hemans, were working with the EC department. And as you'll see in the timeline, in that first meeting, well, in the first meeting, what I described is what we work on, in my opinion, needs to be a visionary document. Even what we're doing now needs to be visionary, you know, with the performance appraisal. Why? Because it's going to be around a decade. There's no chance that DPI, is gonna gear up, a new set of standards and an evaluation tool for school psychologists, anywhere in the near future. So what we developed in the standards, and what I said to the group was that whatever we develop, this is gonna be how we're gonna be evaluated. Because eventually it's gonna, turn into an evaluation instrument. The long and the short of that is we went through 14 drafts, which you'll see. And then all of a sudden we had to stop. And we had to stop because, at that time Teresa Smith, was our student services DPI consultant. And at that time she was over school psychologists, school social workers, and school counselors. And so she said, wait a minute, you can't be doing that. So she talked to me, she talked to the NCSPA board, and said we need to sort of switch gears, which leads me to this slide. Because the reason we had to switch gears is because even though we had a visionary document that we were drafting, it wasn't aligned with anyone else's standards. And so when Teresa Smith intervened, what she told us was that according to the State Board of Education, all the professional standards had to be aligned with the teacher standards. Okay. So it doesn't make any difference whether you look at teachers, standard number 1, teachers demonstrate, leadership. Standard number 1 for school psychologists demonstrate leadership. Standard number 1 for school counselors demonstrate leadership. And it's the same for social workers. So what we have, and the teacher standards were the first standards that were developed, by McReal, who was the contract that DPI had. Okay. And so they developed, the standards, well, the teachers actually developed the standards, they worked on the rubrics, and then they did the validation study. Okay. Because whatever document you have, if you're going to use it for evaluation or employment decisions, it has to be valid. So that's why, these are important. So technically, this piece here is the standard, and this would be described in here in their standards and ours, as the element. And then these are the bullets. So when I pull up our standards, you will see our standards have bullets too. So what I had to do with DPI and working with our other standards is I had to work with Teresa Smith to convert that visionary document that was draft 14, and align it, put all that stuff under 5 standards. And then we had to write descriptors. And if you look at these bullets, every one of these bullets are in this element. That's how it flows. So when we look at our standards in school psychology, you will see the same kind of framework. And then what you see under each standard are, subheadings. So teachers lead in the teaching profession. So these are all areas, how teachers, demonstrate, leadership. And then, here's your standard 2. Teachers, establish respectful environments for diverse populations. So our standard 2 in school psychology also has to do with diversity. Okay? How many of you have actually seen these? Okay? I mean, it's great to know these, and the reason I use it is because I teach my students this. And the reason I do is so that we can walk into a classroom and we can connect with the teacher. And not only can we connect with the teacher, but we know theoretically in the teacher's standards where the teacher's supposed to be going. So we can instantly tell, whether we're looking at a teacher who's sort of on the cutting edge, versus someone who's not. Because as you go through here, it even challenges teachers to quite a bit. And then if we know that, then we look at the evaluation process. So let's look at, the teacher. Okay, so this is the evaluation manual. And by the way, when it's all said and done, we might have a different cover, but this is what ours will look like. So there will actually be a published book that has the standards, and what you're looking at is all the rubrics.
Will we also be able to go online and put in our documentation for each one of the standards like the teachers are able to do?
That I don't know yet. Those kind of details haven't been worked out, and they certainly won't be the committee's decision. We're such a small group comparatively. I don't know how that's going to be done. Although there is going to be training for evaluators in this process. Whether the state board dictates to DPI to launch this, like we have teachers on an online version, which is what the teachers have. So any principal can go on, and evaluate online the teacher, and add in stuff in the evaluation process.
There's just a lot of documentation that the teachers have to do, and it would be easier if we had that same capability.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it.
I'm assuming we're gonna have a lot of documentation as well.
Maybe, maybe not. I think the documentation only comes into play typically if you're talking about disagreements. And it also depends on who you're evaluating. If your evaluator knows you and knows, what you do, I don't think they're gonna ask you for a lot of stuff because they know what you do every day. But if you and the evaluator disagree, on a particular, standard, then that's where you might need documentation.
So that would refer to as artifacts.
So that would be different from what the teachers are required to do then.
Yeah, we would be using artifacts.
Right.
And we've already generated, some potential school site artifacts for each standard that a principal or a lead site or whoever, could look at. So, our booklet is gonna sort of look like this, so it's gonna roll out, and the whole point here is everything's framed, including ours, around 21st century learning, 21st century learning skills. And then you can see sort of the whole outline here. And here's your vendor, McGrew. And then there's an introduction, which we will have as well. And then, this is kind of nice because you have, definitions including what an artifact is. So we'll have similar kinds of definitions, in ours. And then, we also, even in our standards, if you look, when we develop these standards, we have a vision statement. Okay? So vision for school psychology is included in our statement. And that's sort of that, okay, wrap your heads around, look into a crystal ball. We're not writing standards for the here and now. So the challenge in writing any standard, from my perspective, in fact, I looked at some literature that was futuristic literature, okay? And as we would all do, trying to get inside, of our heads and figure out, well, where is school psychology gonna be a decade from now, 2 decades from now, with as fast as information is flowing and with as fast as, potentially our roles are changing. So trying to come up with a statement like that. So here's standard 1 again. Teachers are leaders. We'll scroll through, some of this. And then this is, and here's their online evaluation system. That, any of you can go through and, and look at. So let me kind of, go through this, process here. And, this is sort of the development of the standards. As I stated, in 208, there was a committee, formed initially, about, 15, 20 people. And it came initially, out of the EC division. And then eventually Carolyn Hextall, replaced Jenny Heeman. The standards committee, as I have in this slide, is just a continuation continue to thank those people. There are a few of those people that are actually now working with us on the development, you know, of the current evaluation instrument. Because the reality is, had this group of people not been on the standards, we wouldn't even be where we are. So I keep making the point that the standards are the meat. I mean, that's the body. And that's why that we should all been not only looking, but embracing those standards. You know, knowing that down the road, what we were gonna see was an evaluation instrument that would come as a result of that. So at least in my work, what I encouraged school psychologists to do was to use those standards to start having conversations at a local level to change practice. But then I also had lots of emails, you know, from lead sites, some of which were on that committee, you know, wanting to know actually when the evaluation instrument would be coming out. And the reason for that is because standards are standards. You can't really evaluate anybody on a standard. So there has to be, you know, an evaluation instrument that, you know, has those, you know, rubrics in it. So these are some other people, some of these people you may actually know. So there's, by '08, you know, we had something like 14 drafts, you know, of the older instrument. And the discussion about, you know, Teresa Smith. Teresa Smith is no longer, you know, at DPI. You know, and technically Chris Menard is in DPI now, but she's not over student services. She's in Allied Health, and so she technically works with us and school nurses and social workers, you know, and counselors, but she's not literally over student services. Does that make sense? So our actual school site consultant will be here, you know, with you this afternoon. So again, the alignment piece. So we had to go through reformatting and relining. And then the 209, you know, I worked with Teresa Smith on the public comment period. So the significance of these, I mean, it will be the same, you know, with the evaluation instrument. At some point, that instrument will go out for public comment. The two sessions that I hope to have with Gene Williams and whoever else will be there that wants to join us. One I've written up as sort of an information session. And that will actually kind of be the, literally, facelifting, the unveiling, you know, of the instrument. And there may be some background discussion, providing psychologists at the fall conference on the development of that, you know, and the standards. And then the second session that I submitted this week, and I did this in sort of consultation with Gene Williams to see what she thought the best flow would be. The second session, whenever that is, will be a feedback session. Meaning that whoever is there, school psychologist, what we will want to do is solicit feedback.
I got one concern about not having any reference to assessment in our, in instrument, and that is that we've already had a movement by the APA, people, factions within the APA, to have assessments only be allowed to be done by doctorate level people, which will of course feed more money and business out to the clinical and counseling psychologists, consulting psychologists, whatever. Okay, the guys in private practice. And I'm wondering if by having no reference in that, that's sort of playing into their hands, okay, with regards to future initiatives they might have to do the same thing.
There's actually lots of references in it. Yeah, there's lots of references to assessment, it's just not, it's integrated.
It's not
It's not just,
own standard.
it's
Okay.
not its
It's
own
bulleted.
standard, school psychologists do
Okay.
assessment.
Like under leadership, there was something about teachers use data to analyze and change their teaching practices in order to meet the needs of kids. It would be something similar to that for us.
Yeah, and a lot of our assessment will be framed under problem solving. You know, you have, as we'll see, we have a whole standard dealing with that. But then even in the other standards, you're gonna see, you know, references, lots and lots of references to school psychologists collecting data.
Well, now, when I'm saying assessment, I'm talking about testing and evaluation.
I know, it's
Okay.
gonna be there,
Okay, all right,
okay? It's just not gonna be a standalone,
okay,
okay?
all right.
So, you know, people who wanna do assessment are gonna continue to do assessment, okay? But the bottom line is, people who wanna do other things other than assessment, this is gonna give them an opportunity to do that. And in reality, we want everybody, we want every single person to engage in some other areas. They may not necessarily do everything in every standard, but in my opinion, everybody ought to be doing something in every standard. Okay? Any other questions thus far? Okay. Just like my class.
I think it'd be clearer once we get to see what it looks like.
I know that a lot of this will come down from DPI and then to all the LEAs, but the trend line with our roles contrast with instructional coaches. Seems to me, you're learning to do some of the things that we can do. And, you know, it's almost sometimes jockeying for position. And whether or not there may be a point down the road where, as hearing that 74 positions last year were lost, if we don't embrace some of this, then people who make local decisions will be able to more easily say, well, we don't need that person. Or do what he's referring to, contract out, to get whatever types of assessments that you need.
I'm gonna give you a star. That's exactly nailing it. Okay? We better be doing more than assessment.
But the challenge is though, those of us who have some tread on our tires, and we've been in the field a while, and you know that you have to. I mean, you have to do more than assessment. Oftentimes, you don't get credit for that, because in the bottom line, if you look at the numbers of students you evaluate, supervisors do. And how do you, I mean, I hope the instrument will read, I mean, I've looked at, we've had hard copies of it, will really.
You haven't had
Right.
copies of the instrument.
Well, there's something that we got, not the evaluation, but some of the standards, you know, so that people, superintendents know that you are valued. And
The standards and the evaluation instrument will give you all the ammunition that you need. And when I say advocacy, that's advocacy for our practice is at all levels. I mean, we have to advocate, you know, as a professional association. We have to advocate collectively in your LEAs, you know, as a group, and you have yourself, the only way practice is gonna change, you know, is if we all step up to the plate together, you know, and say, you know, this is what we wanna be doing.
We're able to do
This is what we're
these,
able to do.
we have these skills.
This is what's in our standards.
I think you have to advocate for yourself in the schools, because that's where the superintendent's gonna hear it from. And they're not gonna hear it from you coming to his office or her office and saying, these are all the things I can do, why don't you let me do them?
Yeah.
I think it's putting yourself out there in the classrooms to the teachers. Let me do that time on task observation, let me help you analyze this data, let me help you graph this data.
Absolutely. I like to describe it in class as, it's one thing to talk, but you gotta walk the talk.
You know, I need to comment, you know, what I'm noticing in our school district, what's happening is, you know, we used to have 3 school psychologists, now we have 2 school psychologists, and we have 12 schools. So what has been happening is, we have a lot of teachers, let's say, that are called behavioral consultants, autistic teen consultants, just, you know, teachers that go get some workshop experiences and are hired maybe for less money. And so I think a lot of those things are dictated by the budget demands. And so the 2 school psychologists trying to handle 12 schools, well, you get a stack of reports that you have to finish to meet the 90-day guidelines. And so sometimes you're willing to do all the other things, but conditions are such that you're forced to become a, you know, a testing kind of machine, you know, and that's the reality of it. And I'm glad that we're developing that maybe we're gonna change a little our view on that, but the reality is that sometimes we as school psychologists don't even have a choice.
No, it's
Yeah.
an extremely valid point.
Yeah.
And I think it's along with what you're saying. What we have done for decades, and this is our fault, partly, and some of it's not. But we have given away stuff. You know, because we have sometimes people in the field that don't wanna do other things. And, you know, we're still handcuffed to EC, you know, in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm upbeat about this, but it's not gonna change, you know, instantly for everybody. But it is gonna make some difference.
But within 10 years, if this is the instrument that they are having to evaluate us on, and it has other things in there besides assessments, report writing, attending IEP meetings, then when they go to evaluate us, they're gonna say, well,
They're gonna
did you-
see it.
Did you do this? Did you do that? Well, no, sir, I didn't. I had 9 schools that I had to serve this year, and this was my caseload for the number of kids I had to evaluate, but I would be happy to if I could attend RTI teams or problem-solving teams, or, you know, be available, da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, I mean, I think the instrument in and of itself will help us move in the direction that we need to move to, because that's what we're gonna be evaluated on. It's just like the teachers. Teachers are required to collect a lot of assessment data now and interpret it and show the evidence of it. They didn't have to do that 10 years ago.
That's a great point. And those are the kind of discussions that we as a group need to continue to have. Because that's what it's gonna take. I mean, we have some really progressive school districts out there. I mean, so we do have some great models in this state. And there are school sites that are doing amazing things out there. You know, and there are school sites out there that probably don't do any more in North Carolina, more than 15, 20 evaluations in a whole year. And then we have the other extreme where we might still have people doing 125 or more. See, so we still have lots of variability. And it's not just true in North Carolina. These standards, I want to also make the point, align with the new mass practice model that we rolled out last year at the luncheon. These are standards, our North Carolina professional standards, you know, align with not only the North Carolina training standards for school psychologists, but they also align with the NASP training domains. So as a school psych trainer, those domains that I'm required to train students in, that are gonna be coming in the field, line up, you know, exactly with our instrument. So, you know, we have incredible, awesome skills. I mean, all of you still have, you know, memory traces of graduate school. So you know the things that you, that you had to learn.
I was gonna say, just
You-
the building.
You know the things that you can do. It's a matter of, you know, demonstrating those. Honestly, I've had conversations with school psych 101, even over the standards, and some people were scared to, and they were scared because this is what they said. You know, I had all that stuff in graduate school. But honestly, I can't do it anymore. I haven't been able to do it. When somebody says that to you, what you recognize is that the skills they did have,
And you don't use them, you lose them.
they start to deteriorate.
But I think that also speaks to the importance not only of what the colleges do in trying to train related to this, but also in terms of what the public schools do in terms of staff development for school psychologists.
Absolutely.
Because that's what's happening with the instructional coaches and some of these other folks, they have tons of staff development.
Yeah,
And we need it as well.
yeah. And that's also why NASP has that self-assessment of. Okay.
Well, I'm wondering what will be done or what is being done to, so to move the cheese from the top, because, you know, a lot of my colleagues in Pitt County, and we're involved in a lot of other things, but nobody told the 90 days, you know, if I do something else and my reports get put over there, but then all of a sudden I've got this crisis that I've got to deal with, because I still have those assessments to do, and, you know, I think it's gonna be great, but I think just to say that this is what we're gonna evaluate on, and then we don't have a paradigm shift that sometimes is beyond our control, then it becomes a frustration for me. You know, I'm sitting here thinking, you know, we do a lot of these things, but it's at the cost of time with my family.
Right.
Sure, I totally understand.
You'd rather reports at home.
Yeah.
Another thing too is it just, we haven't, I'm with Pitt County as well, but we haven't been evaluated in years. And when we were evaluated, I remember the things that the person doing the evaluation said didn't apply to us, the counseling, the things that were not quite as assessment oriented, it was, we just won't worry about that. And so I think, again, you would have to, that same attitude or kind of, you know, may play here, because again, the bottom line is, you've got these DPI guidelines and this has to be met, and then you can do whatever you want. But meeting those takes.
Well, you know, I can't speak exactly what DPI is gonna do, but I know that we have had conversations, and I know that the plan, you know, is to train principals and other people, anybody who will be evaluating school psychology.
You don't think it'll be like a lead psychologist that will be evaluating psychologists?
No, I think it will be in a lot of places, but a lot of places don't have lead psychologists.
Well, I was just thinking that if it's a psychologist evaluating psychologist, then the nebulous they you were talking about, they will realize we can do other things, then it'll just be.
I tell you something I think would help our situation. okay? For instance, if we, these coaches and whatnot, and these curriculum specialists and all that, you know, we have a lot of people, okay, on the payroll that don't know jack, okay, that are filling these positions, okay? We need some criteria for when they hire these people. That's what we need some lobbying in, to make sure we've got standards that, because they're putting all kind of people in these positions.
We'll have the pay that we.
Yeah, right,
That's
right.
That's a local, that's a LEA
Yeah,
decision.
but still,
That's what it
if we
is.
had some lobbying within our channels, okay, just like, for instance, some of the folks in APA were doing against us, if we had some lobbying, you know, within our channels through DPI to get some standards for set for who they can hire for these people to fill these positions, okay, that would help immensely in driving this.
Yeah, but realistically, that won't happen because DPI is always gonna support local decisions. And there's never gonna be any kind of,
And at least maybe then some training in what superintendent should look for, past that, and principal should look for, okay, because right now, you know, I mean, I see a lot of people getting a lot of pay that don't know jack.
and that may be true for all of us. But, you know, I suspect all of us, you know, in our positions, you know, have questions about employment decisions and all that, but, you know, I don't think we can change all that, or we can have conversations about it.
I think that would be one area for us to lobby and put pressure.
Just to give you an example of how you can advocate for yourself. When I came to Carteret County 19 years ago, my job interview was, can you evaluate, what ages can you evaluate? Can you evaluate severe and profound? Can you evaluate AIG? Yes, yes, yes. And then my question was, will I be allowed to do other things? And I listed some of the other things. And the response was, from the person at Central Services, was, sure, as long as you get your evaluations done, okay? I don't know if the rest of you had that experience. So when I got assigned my schools, the first thing I did is I went to what used to be the old